the recording on, and I will get us started once it's on. All right, recording is on. Well, welcome everybody. Really glad you're here this evening. We're excited to be able to present to you some of the work of the task forces. We've had 4 task forces that have been working quite diligently over the last couple weeks to provide information and to really determine how we can open safely, hopefully in person in the fall. And so we want to share some of that work and that information with you. We believe it's important and it's pertinent at this time. And so I'm excited to dive into that with you. Before we do, let's open in a word of prayer, and then I will get us started for this evening. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to gather together. Lord, we thank you for each of the families and students that are here. We thank you for this technology that we have to be able to have this meeting. We thank you for health and safety, and we are just so gracious for all the good things that you give us. As we look to the future, we look to August, honestly with a hope, Lord, that we can be here together in person. We miss each other and we want to be together. We pray that you would help us to plan well, that you would continue to heal our land and this world of this virus, and pray for those that are trying to find a cure or at least a vaccine, that would happen soon. And Lord, I pray for each of the families here that you would just give us the ability to rest in your care and your love. And may we honor you this evening. In your name I pray. Amen. Well, in order to make this night go well, we've asked Mr. Kleffer, who some of you, if you've been a student, you know that he is quite gifted at leading conversations and taking us on a journey. And so we've asked him to kind of moderate the discussion this evening. We think that's going to make for a great evening. So I want to introduce Mr. Kleffer. Mr. Kleffer, I had compared you to Pat Sajak earlier today, and I must confess, I've come up with nothing better than that. So I'm going to leave it with just that smooth voice of Pat Sajak. I don't know if he has a smooth voice or not. But anyway, if you would be so kind as to moderate this discussion, you give further introduction to yourself and then take us away, and we will be on our way, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Salerno. Families, welcome. My name is Devin Kleffer. I have the privilege of being a faculty at MVC. I just wrapped up my 10th year there, and I'm excited to go on this journey with you tonight. As Dr. Salerno mentioned, we've got a couple of different task force that we're going to be talking to tonight. And as we do, we're going to do our best. I'll do my best, certainly, to guide the conversation, but we really want to know from you if you have additional questions. So if you do, please type those into the chat area throughout the night as they come to you, and Mrs. Cortez will take those and put them in one of our live docs that I've got access to, and we'll do our best to work those into the conversation. And then at the end, we'll also have a brief period of Q&A then as well. As we kind of launch this evening, I also want to go ahead and tell you a little bit about the task force that we're going to be talking with tonight. We have a total of 4 task force that are working. Tonight, we're going to hear from 2 of them, the Education and Learning Task Force, as well as the Safety, Health, and Wellness Task Force. And we're going to spend approximately 20 to 25 minutes with each task force. And again, budget a little bit of time to come to you and answer your questions at the end this evening. As we get going, Dr. Salerno, let me just bring you back into the conversation for a moment. I'd like to go ahead and ask you a couple of questions that are likely on everyone's mind as we get going. And so if we can just remove any uncertainties as we push away from the doc tonight, I'd like to go ahead and get that off our list.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So much has been made about what education may or may not look like going forward, not just at Monte Vista, but education in general. Some have done a great job of discerning the difference between what is remote learning and what is crisis learning. And so can you, for us tonight, as we get going, define crisis learning and remote learning, and how do both of those play a part of Monte Vista's past and future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, the uncertainty in education is broad. It covers every sector of education from university to preschool. We're all asking questions about what education can be, what it should be, but we're also coming out of quite a traumatic time of about 8 to 12 weeks of education as it was. And much of what it was a reaction to something that none of us, quite honestly, had been prepared for or even practiced. Right. And so this idea of what's called crisis learning or crisis remote learning is literally that learning that happens in a crisis, right? That is in some ways kind of slapped together. You do the best you possibly can with the resources that you have. You make decisions on the fly, And so it literally is learning in a crisis. Whereas true remote learning, planning, preparing, having time to build something intentional is extremely different. And so, one of the questions that you often hear is, how are they different? They're different, one, in how you get into them, and two, how they look. And so I hope tonight we can explain a difference of how they're going to look.
And just so we're clear, where we're headed from this point forward is that very purposeful, creative, reimagined remote learning piece that we're talking about going forward.
It is. So hopefully by the end of this evening, all of you who are listening and watching will be able to see that where we're headed was not where we were. And just to put it in some just technical terms, which I'll define, we were, because of boarding, because of taking care of those students who we had to send back to Asia, we went into a very intentional asynchronous learning, which means very simply that we provided information and students could access it at whatever time they wanted to, due to how our students were spread literally all over the globe. As we look to the future, you're going to be hearing more about synchronous learning, which means learning in real time on a consistent schedule at a consistent time with a very intentional purpose and a very intentional way of doing it. So it would be an understatement to even say that they're going to be different. They literally are completely two different ways of going about teaching and learning. And I hope that becomes clear as we go through this evening.
Absolutely. I know one of the things that all of the task force members are likely to touch on tonight is this, well, it depends on the modality. And so we want to make sure that we bring our audience up to speed on that. And so, Mrs. Cortez, if you could go ahead and screen share that graphic with the folks, that would be great. And as that is getting ready to appear for our audience, Dr. Salerno, can you just give us a snapshot understanding of what is this modality chart thing that we're going to be taking a look at?
Yeah, so we put this out, it's been a couple weeks now, maybe even close to a month, which is hard to imagine, but it's a way of kind of categorizing how Monte Vista can react or serve you depending upon what it is we're dealing with. One of the things that Mr. Kleffer has suggested, and he's right, you're going to hear us say, well, that depends. We're waiting on information here. We don't know this. If this, then that. So what we've done is we've categorized those if-thens into 4 categories for the purpose of colors: green, yellow, orange, and red, or levels 1 through 4. And as we talk through our solutions, we'll refer often to, that's a level 3 solution. So if we find ourselves with these realities, that will be a level 3. Or if we find ourselves with this reality, it will be a level 1. And so let me put that in context just so you know where those extremes lie. Level 1 would be the pre-COVID world before anything went on, anything that happened. And so that's the green. And red, extreme level of concern, is what we just came out of. Fully government mandated, you can't be open type of space. And yellow and orange are those in-between spaces where we're trying to figure out what's happening inside there and what that looks like. So hopefully we'll bring some clarity to these 4 levels throughout the course of this evening.
Right. And just to clarify, so part of the mission of each of these task forces is to develop very detailed plans for each 4 of those levels.
Correct. And so that's what we hope to outline in as greatest detail as we possibly can, recognizing that and just telling you right up front, you will hear it depends, because it depends upon what we find out as we go through.
You know, one of the things that came up during this time of crisis learning, and as we prepare to kind of launch off into truly reimagined remote learning, is the technology that's involved with that. And I know there have already been some updates and upgrades with Monte Vista servers and some of the apps and programs that we're using. But we're also, if I'm understanding things correctly, we're also in this time of doing some beta testing and pilot programs as well. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so technology is a big piece of being able to solve this remote learning situation. And again, you'll hear varying degrees of remote as we go through. So please don't just jump to what we just did. It'll make sense before we're all said and done. But one of the things that we heard very clearly in the surveys, and thank you to each of you who completed that survey, the information was invaluable, was that, for example, our LMS Moodle, it was very cumbersome and hard to use. Our teachers were not consistent in their usage of it. We had never really been forced to think about it, right, Mr. Clever? Wasn't a question that we had really even asked. Right. But our students were saying now that they were relying on Moodle solely as that portal to get in and out of learning, it was incongruous. It wasn't, each teacher did things differently. So even since we've left school, and I know Mr. Lanham will speak of this later, Moodle has gone through an upgrade. it's gone through a complete facelift in terms of how it looks. And we've already begun to implement principles on how best to use it in a way that betters student learning. And so while the situation wasn't what we wanted, that's one outcome. And it was an updated and a better usage of Moodle as an example. The other is we're exploring, and this will become clearer throughout the evening, we're exploring technology that allows us to be able to have students both online and present physically at the same time. And just this morning, we did our first pilot. Mrs. Keithley, in one of her health and wellness classes, piloted that technology, and it went very, very well. It's not there yet, but it went very, very well. And so we're confident that we'll be able to develop a solution which there is no out-of-the-box solution. We have to invent and create this to be able to have students both at home and at school simultaneously. And we'll talk more about that. So I think that exploration of technology is going to be a very important feature of some work we've done and what we're going to continue to do.
Absolutely. As we get ready to bring some of our task force members into the conversation, is there anything in particular you'd like our families to be listening out for this evening?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is a lot of our work is based on not only those 4 operating modalities that we've shared with you, but we also are basing a good bit of our work based upon CDC guidelines for how schools open. And so we'll share on the blog after this is over. There will be a set of resources for you. One of them will just be the CDC checklist of what a school needs to open. And so it's a series of questions that are asked. And if you can't answer yes to them, then they say, don't open. If you can answer yes and get yourself across the table, you get to this little green box that says open with, I forget the exact term, but it's open with monitoring, I think is what it says. Okay. And so we're working very hard to get ourselves across that CDC checklist. And the first task force that you'll hear from is health, safety, and wellness. Most of what the CDC is concerned with are those health and safety features. And so I think you'll be very pleased to hear the work that the Health and Safety Task Force has done. We've worked very hard. We feel like we can answer yes to every one of those questions today, even though there are still unknowns that exist. We feel like we're working our way and have worked ourselves over to that green box that says open with monitoring. And so I hope as parents and students tonight, you'll hear that and you'll say, wow, there's a lot of work that's been done. So you can refer back after this, and you can always look to that CDC guideline. You'll know what we're doing and what we're after. So I think this is a good opportunity for the Health and Safety Task Force to just share some of the things that we're doing to make sure students stay safe and healthy when they come to campus.
Agreed. Let's go ahead and bring our Safety, Health, and Wellness Task Force into the conversation. This task force is made up of roughly 10 or so professional educators as well as professionals in the health field. And tonight, the task force is going to be represented by Erin Torr, who is a full-time on-campus licensed therapist. Also on the task force this evening, Colette Crawford, who is a registered nurse, Nikki Daniels, who is the assistant head to school, and also Matt Coleman, who is the director of athletics. Nikki, let me bring you into the conversation first. Tell us a little bit about what this task force primary mission is all about.
Absolutely. Thanks, Devin. Really, when this group got together, we outlined our purpose, and that is to make sure that every person that walks the Monte Vista campus come August experiences not only physical safety, but also social emotional safety and spiritual safety as well. So it's a pretty lofty goal, but it's very important and essential. So what we did was we just looked across our campus at all the different areas and asked ourselves, who is the expert in this area? Who is the boots on the ground in thinking about what our health station should look like? Who is most closely related to and can speak to athletics, and so on and so forth. And we just got those people together and said, first and foremost, let's dig in and do the research, right? These are experts in their fields. And so just to look into each area, see what is the current recommendations in all the different governing bodies that touch on all these areas, and then bring that back together, and then together as a team start to formulate what would it look like for Monte Vista in your area at level 2? What would it look like at level 3? And that's what we've been building gradually, is putting together not necessarily what we are going to do, because as we've already said, it depends, but many if-then scenarios so that we're prepared no matter what the situation is come August.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and follow up. We've got a couple of related questions from some in our audience tonight. And one is, we draw from 4 to 5 counties throughout the Bay Area and the Central Valley. And when it comes to what local governments are asking or requiring, where does Monte Vista fall into that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are working closely with the Santa Cruz County Health Department. That is our primary governing body. They obviously are also working with the state of California and becoming more and more in sync with the levels that California has outlined as well. But at the end of the day, Santa Cruz County is the group that we will be first in touch with on any questions that might arise, and they will be issuing the regulations and the guidelines that we will be responding to.
Okay, great. And we also have a question concerning new families. Might there be any type of activities online or even in person over summer in order to meet and start connecting and developing a sense of community?
Absolutely. And it's kind of a silver lining this year, right? We could do all kinds of different things. When you realize, Monte Vista, we're so spread out geographically, there really is some beauty to everybody becoming a Zoom expert in the last 2 months, right? So we're looking at all kinds of different options. And certainly even this morning, the topic of our Taking Flight event, which is our orientation kickoff first day for students and for families, that will certainly happen. What it will look like, it all depends, but the mission of that event and others like it to get new families and new students acclimated and integrated, we will fulfill that in whatever that might look like come August.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Colette Crawford, you are our on-campus full-time registered nurse. That in itself is an amazing thing to be able to offer to our MVC community. I want to bring you in on the conversation, and let's just talk about some of the practicality when it comes to maintaining a healthy environment on campus. Can you just give us a snapshot of what some of the things that this task force is working towards to make sure that whether it's the learners, the faculty, our staff members are in a place where safety is a concern and health and wellness are a concern?
Thank you for asking those questions. We have been working hard. One of the things you'll see is that we are going to be having increased gate screening. That could be simply asking health questions. It could be taking the temperature of every single person who comes on campus. We are looking at every single area of the campus. It could be the gym lobby, the bathrooms, the classrooms, locker rooms, the cafe area, hallways, offices, every area, even buses. We're looking at we want to see how we can better support the physical health of students when they're on, students and staff when they're on campus. Another thing that we've decided to do, I'm just going to go ahead and say this, is we have decided to move the health station out of the ARC. It will be in a location that's closer to the main gate. That way we can separate sick students from the healthy students who are in the ARC. And that location will also be a little bit larger, so we can actually separate students who may be displaying symptoms of COVID-19 with other students who are injured or sick in some other way. And that will also provide easier access for parents when they want to come, when they need to come pick up their students. So that's a big change that we're making. We also are adding hand washing and hand sanitizing stations throughout the campus. We will be doing a lot of signage, obviously, and a lot of PSAs, just reminding students and staff of the basic health things they can do to help themselves and others stay healthy.
Awesome. Let me unpack a little bit of that, if you don't mind, and follow up. When you're talking about taking temperatures and stuff, now that is more, if we go back to our modality chart, that's more when it's something that, whether it's the CDC or our local government is saying, this is what we recommend. So if we are in that first column, the green zone, we're not going to automatically be taking temperatures just because we can.
Exactly.
Okay. But the other side of that coin is that if that becomes necessary, we do have a plan in place to facilitate that and make sure that happens.
Yes, we have, although everything is not specifically in place, we are doing a lot of research on different types of temperature taking techniques. I can't think of the word, equipment. And we're just we want to keep our student body and our staff safe, not just physically, but also socially. So
Right.
we're taking a really good look at different ways of taking temperatures.
Yeah. And let's just go ahead and ask a couple more questions that are probably swirling around everyone's mind at one point or another. But when it comes to wearing masks, will that be something that Monte Vista enforces, makes mandatory? Where's kind of the thinking when it comes to wearing masks on campus?
Good question. That is another one of those where we will be following the Santa Cruz County guidelines as far as mask wearing. I used this example this morning. For instance, right now we have on campus, if you were to come on campus, which we're not asking you to do, but if you were to come on campus and you are in a building, we're asking people to wear masks if they're working in a building with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
If they're working in their own classroom, cleaning out old files and things, they don't have to wear a mask because they're not around another person. But again, back to what's going to be required in the fall, we are still closely watching the developments in Santa Cruz County guidelines for both the county and from the education department.
Right, great. Thank you for that very much, Colette. I want to go ahead and ask Erin Torr. Erin is our full-time on-campus licensed therapist. Erin, welcome tonight. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to be part of this. I know our audience is going to benefit from the things that you've got to share. You know, one of the things that rings true, whether it's as a faculty member or as a parent, I see not only for myself, but for my kids that this time of COVID-19 and sheltering in place can really start to weigh on a person's mental state as far as feeling isolated, as far as feeling alone. So can you kind of bring to the conversation how you and your role on campus and within the Monte Vista community is really going to help benefit the community as a whole?
Yeah, thanks for the question. One of the things that makes it especially important that we focus on mental health right now is we were already in a time as a nation, and even some of the world figures and statistics spoke to the fact that young people are experiencing mental health issues at an unprecedented rate. That really some of the studies talk about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 students, about 20% to 25% of our young people will have some type of either significant bump in the road that they hit or major mental health challenge. And those are startling numbers. So we were already in a season where health professionals were talking about us being at epidemic levels, especially with things like anxiety and depression. But there are complications, of course, as we add more and more stressors to young people's lives. So this COVID period has been very disruptive on multiple levels for kids, socially, academically, physically, relationally, it just in so many ways. And then in light of the last, week and a half, really gone to a next level of really crisis in our nation. I see young people struggling and grappling and even just asking really deep existential questions, which can lead to, really hard times emotionally, mentally. So what I'm working on as always is staying on top of research, preparing, reading, being in touch with what others are doing, and thinking both intervention wise and being smart about intervention, but also coming into this new school year thinking prevention and thinking of not just mental health or mental illness, but mental health. What makes a mentally well youth? And thinking of ways that keep kids connected, no matter what level we're at. There are ways to be connected to each other and to the significant adults in their lives, which is one of my favorite things about Monte Vista, is that the kids really draw strength, joy, encouragement, and stability from the adults they interact with all day at school.
Yeah, and so it sounds like there's going to be a very personalized, but also perhaps more importantly, like a proactive community-wide effort to really be mindful of not just the learners, but of course the faculty, everyone that's on campus and part of our community, to have this high emotional health and options for whether it's meeting with you one-on-one or getting referrals off campus, that there's going to be a system in place that makes that a priority.
Yes, absolutely. And anyone who has needed counseling for a family member in the last, I'd say 5 years in all of the counties that we serve has probably experienced the difficulty in getting the right fit in the right timing for the right price. It's a huge obstacle and very heart-wrenching to watch families grapple with that. When your child is in need, you need care immediately. And when you have to wait 3 to 4 weeks to get a connection with someone, and then maybe your teen or tween doesn't even like that person, plus it's $200 an hour, you know, and on, that becomes very challenging and very disruptive. And our whole goal, of course, is to keep kids in school and productive and adjusted. And so when we know that we can, on our part, with a team of professionals, at least do the first, you know, the groundwork, the first few steps of assessing and figuring out what's happening, and maybe even meet the need entirely and eradicate the need to go elsewhere, that's awesome. That keeps our kids feeling held and well cared for within this community and able to continue with school, which is why they're here.
Yeah, well, thank you for being the point person on this and really leading the charge to create and continue to refine what you've already done the last several years, but to make this something that is a priority for us as a school community.
Thanks.
Let me go ahead and bring Matt Coleman into the picture. Matt, of course, is the Director of Athletics at Monte Vista. And the question on everyone's mind, Mr. Coleman, is, are we having sports in the fall or not?
That is a great question, and I think I have answered that so many times. I woke up in the middle of the night last night just talking about it. You know, it's really easy to compare ourselves to other states, and I'm guilty as charged. And you know, when some of the states have already gone back to athletic activities even this week. But patience and understanding is key as we navigate each step. And even in California, we will likely differ from county to county. So in regards to what our athletic year will look like, everything is on the table, from starting athletics later in the school year while shortening the seasons and having no postseason play, so making our conference play the priority, as well as the possibility, believe it or not, of combining 3 seasons into 2. And don't ask me about that puzzle and how that's going to be done. But so everything is on the table. And I've been in constant contact with CCS, which is our governing athletic body, and asking them pretty much on a weekly basis what they have for us as far as news. And just even last week, the answer had been, we'll have something mid-June. And today, even this morning, talking to both our PCAL commissioner, our league commissioner, and CCS's commissioner, now they're saying that sometime in July. So that's how things change, and we just have to really practice patience while waiting for those details and having flexibility, knowing that we may need to change some of our schedules and our policies and procedures depending on the guidelines that they give to us.
Yeah. And so there is some things that are obviously not within Monte Vista's direct control, but there are some things that we actually do have some control over. And I know as a former athlete, as a father that had kids that play sports, and as a former coach, I know that athletics is a big part of a high schooler's, even middle schooler's social life. So what are we doing in order to make sure that our athletes actually still have those great things that come out of being part of a team and playing sports?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've really taken this great opportunity to really tackle it head on and really look at our procedures and our processes to create experiences that are, one, safe, that they're still competitive, and that they're engaging while really collaborating with a network of athletic departments from similar types of schools, and taking the guidelines from the National Federation of High Schools. So just to give you a few details, we've developed a plan for our athletic staff and coaches on what to ask our student athletes, what to look for, and how to safely navigate transition back to participation on our campus. So this even includes detailed plans of what we would do from the moment that they exit their vehicle to when they walk to the gate, and then to the facility they are going to be using. And the idea is that we are looking at our students that they will touch as little as possible entering and exiting our campus. So And I know that the popular thing right now is garage workouts, but it's important to note that we are being very purposeful by focusing on getting our student athletes safely back into shape first before we engage in sport-specific skills. So we're excited to get back at it, and when we are able to do so safely, we'll be ready.
Awesome. Thank you for giving us that insight into our athletics program. Nikki, let me bring you back on. I've got some follow-up stuff for you. You know, MVC, in addition to our athletic program, we've got a thriving performing arts program. And so what are some of the things that MVC is working on to plan and prepare for our persons that are in musicals, that are in plays, choir events, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our director of fine arts, Morgan Matos, wasn't able to be with us today, but she is largely following a lot of the same model that Mr. Coleman just outlined for athletics. So thinking through the different levels, the different modalities, and what that could mean for fine arts across all the different examples you just gave, and many more as well, caring for those students and their interests in the things that give them life also. And we're really using that model across the board in other areas. So whether it's transportation, whether it's gate security, all those different areas, the level of thoroughness that Mr. Coleman just described is what our goal is as far as thinking through what our options are.
Yeah, that's great. And when it comes to some of those things that are on everyone's mind, when it comes to things like social distancing on campus, and you've got a bunch of young adults and you're trying to maintain these guidelines, what are things looking like when it comes to preparing for situations like that?
Yeah, absolutely. On top of preparation there, the other key is going to be communication, right? So students and parents, we know, are anxious to know, what should we expect? What is school going to look like? And our commitment to you is that as soon as we do know, we will be on top of sharing and communicating that information. So much of it, like Mrs. Tor referenced, there's an anxiety and an uncertainty. So our goal is going to be that as we know things, that we're going to be giving students a taste of what that's going to look like, preparing them. We've joked about YouTube videos and things like that, but whatever it's going to take to really help them be able to picture what that first day and the weeks following are going to look like for them, and really helping them to know what's going to be expected of them. And just like we always do at Monte Vista, then holding them accountable, coming alongside them in a loving way. We have a wonderful staff and faculty full of people that know adolescents really, really well. So I have no doubt that they will be up to the task.
Yeah. And let me go ahead and take this opportunity to actually just plug our blog. So for you in the audience that are already not subscribed to the MVC blog, which is openforgood.mvcs.org, subscribe to that, because any of the things that we're talking about, updates to how we're planning, more insights to some of the work the other task force are doing, that's going to be the place where it's going to be your one-stop shopping, where you're going to get immediate insight and updates from where the process is from our perspective. Nikki, let me just ask a follow-up question. We had a question from our audience wanting a little bit more information about those Zoom sessions maybe throughout the summer for new families, or maybe families that are also part of Monte Vista's family right now. And of course, when it comes to classes in the fall and beyond, we will have synchronous classes where attendance is taken, all that. But are you envisioning for these community building events, it would just kind of be a plus and an option to attend, but certainly everyone is welcome?
Absolutely. And as we've been saying about, the start of school as well, whatever we're able to do in person, we absolutely will safely do. And that's always going to be our goal. But just like we've done for the last few months, where that's not possible, we will provide those opportunities for families and for students to connect.
Awesome. Thank you. And let's go ahead and transition a little bit, and we're going to bring in our other task force and the task force members. And again, audience, anytime you want to write a question to ask anyone, please go ahead and do so in the chat area, and we'll make sure to put that in our list of questions. The Education and Learning Task Force has got over a dozen professional educators on there. Representing the task force this evening, Tracy Bartholomew, who of course is the head academic advisor, as well as Michael Lanham, who is one of our faculty members, and then also our head of school, Dr. Salerno. Mitch, let me go ahead and come back to you as we get rolling on this and just discuss a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what school may look like when we begin in August. Is Monte Vista going to be holding campuses online, remotely, or both?
The answer is yes. Yes, we will. The goal, honestly, is to be able to accommodate both simultaneously. So one of the things that we're working on is we recognize that in those 4 operational modalities, from green to red, that there is a component where no matter where we lie in that spectrum, that some families are going to want to be here physically and have their students here physically to learn. And yet there are others. And we even saw that after our last meeting at 2 o'clock, where some families reached out, as some families are also very nervous and very, very sensitive to family members who might be compromised or have a pre-existing condition. And so we recognize that all of our families are in different spots. So we are working right now, and I'll hopefully be able to shed some more light on this as we go back and forth. The answer is yes. We plan on it. We hope to be on campus, but we want to have a component of remote that actually flows alongside of it, that is synchronous, which means it's happening in real time. And again, I hope I'll give some, but the answer is yes, both.
So it brings up the next obvious question then. If we're looking at developing this robust and reimagined remote learning and still have courses here on campus, are families going to have an option of what they do on any given day?
That's the goal. The goal is that families will be able to make decisions based upon individual family needs and individual family circumstances. And without going through every possible scenario that could come up, you can think of several. You can think of a mom or dad who works wherever they work, and there's someone at their work who becomes ill with COVID, and now that student is compromised, has to stay at home for 14 days. They can't come to school because of a secondary connection to COVID. And we need to have a platform by which to make sure that that student can come to school. Another scenario that really comes into play is what happens if any one of us in today's situation comes down even with the common cold. Our tolerance level for symptoms in the common cold, you're not going to be welcome on campus. If you have a fever, if you've got a runny nose, if you have any of the symptoms that could even potentially relate to COVID, that student has to stay at home. So absenteeism is going to rise as we move into next year. So our goal is to build something, Mr. Kleffer, that has the ability for students to either be present or be at home, and they have a choice. And it really depends upon their needs and what their individual family needs are.
Right, absolutely. You know, one of the things that obviously has been part of the talks behind the scenes with the task force is, what does this look like? You've mentioned it's going to be a synchronous schedule. So whether it's online or in person, we'll actually have specific set times for classes. Last winter, a new schedule was released. And so are we sticking with that schedule? Are we reimagining that schedule? Where is that?
It's a great question. I'm actually really glad that we reimagined the schedule. One of the things that we did was we introduced the A and B, the alternating days, 4 classes one day and 4 classes the next. And you'll see in a few minutes how that's going to be really, really beneficial. Something we didn't have that this year, and it will be very beneficial as we look to this this revised model of learning. But if we come back in green, level 1, we will run that schedule that was announced in December as it was announced, right? Okay. Periods that rotate each day, alternating for one day for the next day, that will all happen as planned. If we open in level 2 and beyond, it will look a bit different. We don't have firm plans in terms of something that I'm willing to announce just yet, but I can give you the idea. If we move to level 2, we will be supporting, we're guessing somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% of our students on campus, and potentially 20% due to absenteeism at whatever the reason is in a remote scenario. Okay. And so we would get rid of the rotation, meaning that the periods themselves will not rotate. So we don't go period 1, 3, 5, 7, and the next time it's an odd day, 3, 5, 7, 1. The rotation will disappear because that's very difficult for someone with such a high percentage of remote learners. That's extremely difficult to follow. Okay. We will be extending the passing periods and removing the long breaks. So we want to be able to give students who are remote an opportunity to switch from one class to the next, not be on the screen consistently all day long, have a longer break, and also be able to handle some of the social distancing issues here. and I guess I give level 3. There'll be additional shifts for level 3,
Yeah.
which at that point, I'll just mention, we had said earlier that the AB was helpful. I know many people ask questions about what happens if only half the students can be here at one time. We
Right.
now have plans, and I'm sure Mrs. Daniels can share a little later too. A question will pop up, I'm almost certain of it, about how we would do that. But we're prepared at level 3, even accommodate a 50-50 need. And then level 4 is obviously synchronous, fully taught by teachers, but that would be fully remote at that point in time.
And it sounds, I'm clear, that when it comes to this, maximum attention has been paid to making sure whatever level we're at, we're trying to minimize the change in routine and things for our learners.
Correct. So as we look to shift from what we had announced in December, it's minimal shifting. So we want to be able to have something that's applicable across all 4 of the operational modalities. And I think we're very, very close, if not there, as we work behind the scenes to have something that makes it easy for students, but also gives students flexibility to either be on campus or off.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Nikki, I'm actually going to backtrack a little bit. I want to pull you back into this conversation because we've had a couple questions come in that I think that you could address very well. And one of them has to do with COVID testing and what's going to be in place as far as testing faculty. Will that be done routinely? What is being done about making sure that faculty and staff are also have the advantage of being in a healthy and safe environment?
Yeah, that's a great question because that is obviously a huge priority. And I would refer back to what I mentioned earlier about our close communication and connection with the Santa Cruz County Health Department. Obviously, we would need to rely on them when it comes to making that sort of decision, not only on what's available and what our options are, but what they would be recommending at that point. We're always going to err on the side of care, and we're always going to go above and beyond when it comes to taking care of our people, whether that's our employees or our students. But at this point, we're going to have to wait and see where things are at and work closely with the health department.
Mr. Kleffer, I can add to that. There's an HR component to that as well. So immediately when I see the question being asked, like, what will we mandatorily do for our faculty and staff regarding testing? This is my role as head of school. I will be talking to the health department, our attorney, all of those folks to what is the appropriate thing that we can do? What are we permitted to do? What is the things that we're allowed to do? So there's 2 sets of safety here. There's safety for our employees and there's safety for our students. And what is recommended by both the health department and just good legal sense will dictate what's mandatory and what's voluntary.
And if I can just kind of go a little further down that road with you, would that be the same response when it comes to when a vaccine becomes ready, as far as MVC developing any policy that would require or not require our students to be vaccinated?
Yeah, this is super touchy. So I don't know where the audience is in terms of vaccines and what you think about vaccines. We follow the law when it comes to vaccines. And so we don't have an option relative to the garden variety. I want to be very, very clear here. So make sure you listen to what I'm about to say, because I don't want to misspeak. But when it comes to things like Tdap and the required medical vaccines, Monte Vista follows what the state of California requires us to follow. I have no idea what is going to be a requirement as it relates to COVID vaccines. I don't even want to begin to speculate there. But in terms of us generating our own policy as it relates to vaccines, the answer is absolutely not. We will follow whatever the guidelines are that come from the governmental authorities, and you as a citizen can interact with those requirements as they come down. That's not going to be something that we will unilaterally make a decision on ourselves. So we will follow whatever our authorities will tell us in that situation.
Awesome, thank you. I want to turn back now to the Learning and Education Task Force. And I want to actually introduce Michael Lanham, who is part of the faculty at Monte Vista Christian. Mike, I know that none of us wished for the circumstances of COVID, but it's been an incredible opportunity to reimagine what education could look like, especially what it could look like at Monte Vista Christian. And so let's just begin right here, Mike. What has you most excited going forward with this incredible opportunity?
Yeah, there's probably 2 things that I really want to touch on. When we entered into remote learning, I found that my students were very, very capable for the task, except that they could not figure out my Moodle. They had no idea what I was actually trying to get them to do. And as soon as that was figured out, then there was a lot more help. But I'm teaching a summer school course right now that I get to see what the new redesigned Moodle looks like. And all the feedback that I've gotten from my students is that it's just, they understand exactly what they need to do because it's so much simpler. I'm excited for the new format because whether we're on campus or we're off, our students are going to know what they need to do in order to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, really well said. And so for those that may have some experience with Moodle, whether as a student or as a family member trying to figure it out, what Mike's talking about is going forward, we're not only redesigning what Moodle looks like, but also that it will be a same look, feel experience for the end user, regardless of the course. So whether it's Mike's Spanish class, my history class, Marsha Tar's chemistry class, where the calendars are located, where the assignments are located, how things are turning is going to be the same across all courses. And Mike, I'm also teaching a summer school course, and I have to agree with you. It's been a super positive experience thus far. And I'm glad that this is one of the many steps that we're taking for this remote learning phase. Tracy, let me go ahead and invite you into the conversation. You oversee a fantastic team of academic advisors. And here we are at this evolution point where we're launching into some really cool stuff for Monte Vista and where we're going. And can you just talk a little bit about how what's going on right now and where we're headed actually compares with some of the other alternative options that are available for families?
Yeah, thanks, Devin. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I think that the benefit that our department has is that we can work with the student and with the families, the parents as well, partnering with the parents and just working with the student as a whole, the student as a whole student, that all sides, whether it's planning their courses, their academic piece of it, or talking about their passions and their desires and their dreams. And as they plan for post-high school plans and college, applications, that can seem very daunting. And we meet with the student, we spend time with the student, we build relationship with them, and they have their each individualized, customized plan specifically for the student. We want to help bridge that gap for them. As we look ahead, how we're going to navigate this is as we, talk about what it's going to look like in the fall. One of the things we've already jumped on is the opportunity to do college kickstart, which we're doing this week with rising seniors. And we have 40 seniors on there working on their college applications already. And it's opened up a brand new door of just having college admissions counselors hop on a Zoom call with us, or we've had alumni come on this week and talk about their experience with the college application, with their college search and college applications and their experience with that. So it's just really broadened our horizons with all that we can do and not making appointments and can you come to campus on this day? So we're getting creative, and there's a lot of great things that we can do. And it's not just about the college application piece. It's also, like I mentioned, just working with the student, helping them thrive, caring about them and seeing them and knowing them.
Yeah, that mirrors a lot of what Erin was talking about earlier. And I love that personalized attention and really, quite frankly, the experience that families are going to receive as they go through Monte Vista. And I love the fact too that you're bringing alumni into this as well. That's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Mike, let me come back to you with this. Mitch talked about at the beginning that remote learning is very different than crisis learning. You gave us a little bit of insight into the smallest fraction of what's happening with the changes in Moodle and whatnot. But one of the things that's been talked about that solid remote learning as well as in-person learning requires it to be engaging and creative and maybe even collaboration that breaks down walls between subject matters and things like that. So give us just a little peek behind the curtain at some of the things that you're working on.
Yeah, so there's I'll give you an example from this past year and then one thing that I'm working on right now. The Spanish department paired up with our art department and we did something incredible in my humble opinion. we have a strategic partner at Monte Vista, and their name is Rancho de sus Niños. They are an orphanage, an amazing orphanage down in Baja, California. And what my students did is they made an initial contact with some of the kids that live down there, and they introduced themselves just kind of in a really small pen pal way. What we did from there is we got pictures of them, and our AP art students went ahead and they did these beautiful portraits of them that we then got to take down on a trip. Kind of to take it one step further, next year, what I'm hoping to do is to pair with our digital media class and take my Spanish 1 students that their first semester is going to be all about talking about their own personal information, telling their own story at a Spanish 1 level. But they're going to learn how to create a video that they then can send down to our partners at Rancho, and they can begin to build a relationship with the kids that live down there. And in my opinion, this gives so much more purpose to learning Spanish rather than just standing up, conjugating a verb, saying hello, repeating after the teacher. I think it gives it life.
Right. I love that. And just with that illustration there, you talked about bringing in digital video. Of course, that also plays nicely with things like geography and history as well. And just so everyone's clear, Mike, we're not just talking about this is what Mr. Lanham's doing, but it's fair to say that faculty has been working hard since March on many things for this new phase of what we'll be unveiling in the fall.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking with one of my coworkers, Mrs. Fleming, and she is incredibly excited to be working with our biology teacher to learn research skills too, and many other things that we have going on with that. I don't want to pull the curtain back too far.
Well, thank you for painting that picture. Tracy, what's great about what Mike just talked about is it plays so nicely with International Baccalaureate Program. And, you know, one of the things that IB is going to really benefit not just the learner, but the faculty as well, because of the inquiry-based learning through the IB program, we're going to be able to ditch a lot of the, what we'll just call the proverbial worksheets and busy work, and be able to focus on some skill building, which is outstanding in my opinion. I would love for you though, Tracy, to kind of speak into the overall approach to workload and how that might look different going forward.
Yes, I think, I know, I'm confident in the fact that we want to empower our students to thrive. And one way that we are looking at, we believe that we're going to do this next year is with the schedule that Dr. Salerno has so nicely presented and touched a little bit on ways that we can help reduce the stress, reduce the workload, and how we might go about that. And I believe with the block scheduling and the 80-minute periods next year, it really is going to alleviate some of that, the stress of the work, and also just with the maybe limiting of the passing periods, or, you know, the breaks, or again, like things that he had already mentioned. But yeah, it's something that we consider and think about often.
I love that. And while I've got you, can you speak a little bit about some of the course offerings and stuff? And Mitch, feel free to jump in here as well, because I know that that's another area you both have been collaborating on.
Yeah, I can go first, Tracy. You know, there was a question asked about, you know, if there's a reduction in students, will there still be a variety of advanced course offerings? And the answer is yes, as much as there's student interest for the courses. So, you know, it's hard to project at this point that there's going to be a significant drop in students. It's just that we will schedule based upon student interest and student needs. So I have not seen, and Mrs. Bartholomew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I have not seen a corresponding drop in the variety of course offerings. The number of sections might drop, but I don't see a corresponding drop in the type of course offerings. I do see a realignment for our IB journey, but not a reduction in anything that would be significant. Is that right?
Right, I agree. We have a lot of course offerings out there and a lot of exciting options.
Yeah. And Mitch, if you could go ahead and address, you know, there's been some of our audience members have asked about going back to that chart and where it talks about 100% learning and 80% learning. And can you just kind of address and better define that for us here in the moment?
I think I understand the question. And I think the question is really like, when we went to that crisis remote learning, I think the person is asking, it appeared that there was a reduction in learning. I don't know that I necessarily agree that there was a reduction in learning. I think it was exactly what we defined at the beginning, which is crisis remote learning. It looked completely different. And I know in the question, I read that there, referenced this idea of a reduction in we took away final exams. We didn't take away final exams because we necessarily think that we wanted to reduce learning. We took away final exams, Mrs. Tor can speak to this, because we were seeing significant stress on students from the fact that we had rapidly moved into crisis remote learning. And it was supposed to be for 3 weeks. That's what we had all presumed when we opened up the crisis remote learning. And it quickly evolved into something that was going to last the remainder of the semester, which was jarring for every constituency within the school. It was jarring for the administration. It was jarring for the faculty. It was jarring for the parents. It was jarring for the students. And we just believed last year that as we wrapped the year, finals were counterproductive. There was, as you and I talked, Evan, on the onset of this, there was a crisis remote learning. We were slapping things together that wasn't intentionally planned. So whether we open in green or red, whether students, we're at 50% students one day and 50% the next, whether we're at 90% of our students on campus or 100% of our students on campus when we open, we will be open for 100% learning. As we envision and plan and build, Mr. Landham has given a little insight into this. It's 100% full steam ahead with high quality inquiry-based learning. And we believe that can be delivered, whether that is in someone at home or someone here simultaneously at the same time, following a schedule together. That can be done. And that's why there's flexibility from level 1 all the way to level 4, is we believe, as this person has suggested in the question, that we want to be at 100% learning. And even if we had to move to level 4, right, fully remote, it will look dramatically different than what we experienced this spring, because it will not be crisis, it will be planned.
Right. And just to kind of follow up on that a little bit, if we were to just say the first day of school is tomorrow, and based where CDC and local guidelines are right now, where would we be on that chart right now?
Today we're in level 4. Today we're in level 4. There is, as of June 3rd, California is still in middle stage 2 of its own opening. In Santa Cruz County, if you don't come and frequent Santa Cruz County very often, our restaurants just opened on Monday. We can now get a haircut. This is a beauty from my wife that she did this one, but we can now go to barbershops in our county. So today on June 3rd, we're in level 4. I would anticipate, if today was August 10th or whatever day the first day of school is, my hope is that we're at level 2. That would be my hope. And that would be my desire. That's what we're shooting for, is level 2. Where we actually end up is largely dependent upon what happens between now and August in terms of what the county authorities and the state government do. We are on a trajectory of continued opening up. I think we all would agree that that is moving. Whether we agree that's the right thing or not is another story for another day, but right, it's moving in that direction. So we hope that level 2 is where we would be in August.
Right. As we start to transition towards wrapping things up, Mitch, we do have another question, just kind of as far as logistics go. When it comes to breakfast, break, lunch, what kind of plans might we see unfold? Should we still have to do social distancing and things like that?
Well, I'll answer that one, but I'll first pose a question that I want Nikki to prepare for, because we've lightly touched on transportation. And I know, even though people are not asking the question yet, I don't think we should let it pass. If they don't ask, I'm not doing it. So if you can prepare for that, that'd be great. And if you have a question regarding transportation, now would be a great time to ask that question in the chat. We don't want to not answer your question. So Devin, just so I don't forget, I'm not very smart sometimes. The question regarding cafeteria, breaks, what will that look like? How will that be?
As far as food distribution, social distancing, things like that.
Yeah, so you really got to look across the levels again. You got to use the operational modalities as a guide. If we open in the green in level 1, it'll look very much like it was when you left. Students going to the buffet, getting served, probably very much like normal. As you slide to the right, as you move into yellow and orange, you start to eliminate buffet style. So I can say, I spoke with Epicurean just a few days ago. If we open in level 2, there will probably be no buffet served in a straight fashion where they put it on a plate and hand you a plate. It's going to be prepackaged in some kind of a takeaway container. More than likely, it will be pre-ordered to eliminate the need for biometrics. We use a fingerprint scanning, so already removing biometric scanning from pays, trying to eliminate lines. So everything will be centered around the reduction and the removal of waiting. So you'll have quite a bit of grab and go options, pre-order options. You will see things like the tables in the cafeteria removed, so that there can be extra serving stations, so that there can be a spaced out serving of food. And then there'll be creative ways. You know, we've talked about, Mr. Talley was sharing a story of a school that he heard of that was encouraging students to bring their own lawn chair. And that they could still sit in groups in lawn chairs. You know, we've got a wonderful campus for that. I mean, probably the most beautiful in the country, 105 acres, redwood trees, grassy areas. I don't know, it could be something like that where you just see those types of things. But there's going to be a concerted effort to encourage social distancing, or really a better term is physical distancing, right? Not social distancing, but physical distancing, and a reduction of any type of potential contamination, whether that be through line or through food service. So much like we've experienced in the to-go world that we've all lived in the last, say, 6 weeks, you'll see a grab and go type scenario in the cafeteria.
Before we jump back to Nikki and talk about transportation, a couple more questions have come in. When it comes to the schedule, a question has come in, will it be similar to what learners are experiencing now with summer school, where there's that dedicated space for the live learning, there's some other time in between where there's a lot of time to work on stuff, things like that?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think summer school is, again, a step towards what we're going for, which is more interaction in real time with your instructor. But summer school is operating in an accelerated format where they need to do basically 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. And so students can't be in direct instruction online for 8 hours on a screen. Even if they were on campus, and I know you've taught summer school and others have taught summer school, even in a face-to-face summer school, there's going to be some direct instruction and then some independent work, some direct instruction and independent work. So summer school follows a very, very different format than what you would see. But you might, you know, like I said, Mrs. Keithley was piloting some things today. There might be some teachers, and our goal is to utilize summer school to pilot some of this technology that we're researching, so that we're able and ready in August to do what's called blended synchronous, someone at home or in person, both live, both. I know Mr. Lanham, he and I talked just this afternoon about him going in and doing some of that work for his Spanish class and learning to pilot there. So no, I'd say very, very, very different. There's hints of it, there's tastes of it, but it is not the same thing.
Right, right. The synchronous part, perhaps, when everyone's coming together at a designated time.
But even then, you know, we are still 2 months away from opening. There's a whole portion of the education task force, which we really didn't touch on because it's an internal piece, but that's professional development and preparation and professional training to make sure not only continued in our IB inquiry-based journey, but also in how to effectively use 80 minutes, how to teach in a blended synchronous environment. So even the teachers that are teaching in the summer school right now still have quite a bit of growth and learning themselves before they show up in August and deliver in that format. So some of even that direct instruction might be different as it reemerges on the other side of the sun.
Absolutely. Another question about the modalities, and is that a Monte Vista thing, or if we were to take another high school, middle school in Santa Cruz County, would they be applying the same formula?
You know, I don't know. I've worked with other schools around the country, so I will not take credit for the idea. We're a member of a group called CISA. It's a national group of schools, much like Monte Vista, that are Christian schools that are larger, and a group of heads were together. I got that idea from, I believe, a school in Dallas had come up with level 1 through 4. We stole it and adapted it to us. It has since been stolen from us and readapted by others. I have not heard of the public system in Santa Cruz County or any other school in Santa Cruz County that's adopted similar language. I don't think it's a novel idea, and I think it works, so I hope some other people use it. But the way we're utilizing it is unique to us for the purposes of how we imagine it and how it will affect our community.
Wonderful. Stay tuned. I'm finally going to go back to Nikki and talk about transportation, and then we'll come back and you can wrap things up for us.
All right, sounds good.
Nikki, what do things look like when it comes to transportation, bus routes, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is, in a good sense, when it comes to safety, one of the most highly regulated aspects of life at Monte Vista. So in so many areas where we've mentioned we're waiting for recommendations and specifications from governing bodies, that is particularly true when it comes to our busing and to transportation. So whether it's local and state and federal authorities, they have a whole lot to say about our policies and procedures on our buses. So we are waiting anxiously for further direction from them. That being said, it's important for students and families to know that we fully recognize that for families that do use the bus system, that the moment that your student gets on that bus, they have, for all intents and purposes, arrived at school, right? So our responsibility to them and to you as far as their safety and their care kicks in right at that moment. And so it's with that model that our transportation department is working really hard, again, to talk about, okay, if the threat level is at a level 2, what are the precautions we need to take on the bus? If it's at a level 3, well, how does that look differently? And one of the things that I know in the last session some folks had questions about was if we go to level 3 and if we are limited in the number of students we're able to have at school, how would that look with our busing, right? And so one of the approaches that we're looking at actually is if we did have to go to half one day, half another physically, obviously knowing that the others are doing remote learning, could we do that geographically? And if we were able to do that, we would have a whole set of bus routes that would be running and a whole set that aren't. And then could we send the bus routes that aren't running that particular day and essentially double up in the ones that are, which would afford even that much more distancing and safety bus-wise. So that's just a sample of some of the creativity and the ways that we are looking at how to make the right arrangements. But just know that the bus, the ability to use busing is part of the heart and soul of Monte Vista. We recognize that, and so we really are committed to making that work in a safe and effective way for next year.
So thank you, Nikki.
Devin, I see one more question there we probably should answer. I think it's the last one I saw Gretchen type it in. Let's do that one last one, then I'll close this up.
Well, just let it roll. You're the man at the top of the food pyramid, so I'm gonna let you take it.
All right, well, I guess I got it. The question, it's a good question. And I might not have been clear, and I got a text about it from someone who was watching, so I might not have been clear. Regardless of the modality level, can a student be fully online fully till students or parents feel comfortable with on-site, or will school expect the student to be on campus if level 1? It's a fantastic question. I hope that we're at level 1. I don't think we will be. Honestly, I think level 2 is probably our best hope for August. But the answer to your question most generally is yes. That's what we're building for, is we're building the educational experience so that there is flexibility for you as a parent to make a decision. If there's one message that we have heard consistently since this health crisis has broken out, is that various families are experiencing their own personal risk level, risk tolerance at various stages. Some families are not worried and they're happy to do a whole slew of things. Other families, again, for whatever reason, and it's not worth judging those reasons, they're real reasons, whether it's a health issue or just personal low risk tolerance. It's okay. Some families aren't as comfortable venturing out into public just yet. And so we want to ensure a system that it gives families and students the ability to make that decision at their discretion, whether they come to school or stay home. And we believe that the path that we're on is creating an opportunity that both students can be educated equally, synchronously at the same time, regardless of location. And as I've mentioned throughout the course here, is that we don't know what those reasons are going to be. And so flexibility is a guiding principle that's leading us through this particular situation. So the answer to your question is yes, you will be able to choose accordingly. With that, I don't see any other questions. And I hope that means we learned from our 2 o'clock and that we did a better job answering the questions, and not that you just don't want to ask the questions. But should you, at any time after this is over, which it will be in a few moments, if you have additional questions, Mrs. Daniels, myself, any of the administrators, Mrs. Swing, Mrs. Medina, and on down the line, we're here. It was great to hear from many folks, even after our 2 o'clock, that sent some emails in. Please reach out to us. I can't stress enough how this situation is constantly going to be evolving. So if there's any theme that came out of this evening, number one, I hope you understand that we're prepared for whatever guidelines, whatever happens. If there's a second wave, if there's no second wave, if athletics open or close, we're ready for all of them. And we're building scenarios in each of the 4 operational modalities. But in that rebuilding, I hope you see that nimbleness, that agility, that resourced nature, and a willingness to take an opportunity to utilize this to assist your student. We feel like we're uniquely positioned for you to be able to provide a unique service to you. And that's our mission, is to empower your learner to their highest potential. And we think that while we don't like COVID, it really has been an opportunity for us to reimagine what we do. And it's been even an accelerator of our IB journey. And we're really, really excited about that. The last big idea I hope you take away is that safety is paramount and preeminent for us. We're going to do everything we can to keep your students safe. And that means following guidelines that come from our local and state officials, making wise decisions, but giving you the flexibility within those decisions, because we also have learned anything, if we've learned anything the last couple of weeks, is we can't make all of you happy. You all have a varying degree of thoughts and feelings regarding how safe you feel in this COVID time. And we want to build something that does meet each of your needs, regardless of the policies that are handed to us. So I hope you feel that love and that care. I hope that this was very informative for you tonight. There will be a recording that is created, and you can watch it or pass it along to others who might have questions. So for the sake of this evening, before we say goodbye, Gretchen, you can close the recording. And for all of you, thank you for participating.